There's so much talk about weird ways of manifesting stuff and things magically appearing in your life, and so little of what does it actually take to consciously create your life. And maybe for a moment, let's discard the magical thinking, let's discard the metaphysics of that, and see how our mind, how our consciousness actually interacts with the world, because it does. And hint, it does through the actions that we create, but the actions that we do are created by the states that we have, especially the states that we are not sure we have, that we're not aware that we have. In this video, I'm going to talk about conscious creation, about the fact that the things that you want to create in your life have to be definitely, first of all, created right here. And it's not magical thinking, it's the fact that a person who doesn't have the right mindset for doing things is going to struggle very hard to do those things. Let's start with an example. If you, for whatever reason, had some, bad romantic experiences with men or women or whatever, when you were a teen, some broken heart or something, you will have potentially a negative attitude towards the opposite sex. Now imagine that it was a very negative experience. And now you're the type of person like all men are this, all women are that type of person. Do you realize the severity of this state of consciousness that you have installed in you? Do you realize that when you're going down the street, it's like a filter that you have on reality, and you will only notice the negative aspects of the other people? Do you realize that if you do that, you will also literally not notice the good people around you? Let's use another example, a more radical example. When people go from maybe bad families or something and they're used to drama in a relationship, do you know that if you see a person who is low drama, low maintenance, actually a good person, a good partner, you will probably not even notice them. You will think that they're boring. How about something else? Let's say you have, for whatever reason, a kind of a bad work ethic. You're feeling either too good for this, or maybe you're very insecure. You're feeling always not good enough. Do you realize that when an opportunity will present itself, right, to do some job, to get a raise, to do this, to do that, those subtle little things, right, that in real life, that's how progress is made, you will either avoid that, or you will self-sabotage yourself. You will do whatever it takes to realize that vision. So you have to start from understanding that the way that we live our life is, first of all, it's not exactly a conscious life. And if you want to create your life consciously, you have to start by looking at the things that you assume about life, not the idealized stuff that you want to think about life, okay? The things that you actually assume. The silent little, murmurings that you say to yourself when you're thinking about the topic, when you're kind of tired, when you're no longer trying to pretend, the little, I just always mess up, just women, that's women for you, yeah, money, yeah, that's just, that rich people, creativity, oh, yeah, I'm just not that original, I'm just not original. That stuff is what your life is actually made of. Now, if you're struggling in certain areas of your life, if you're aware, or if you do the work to become aware, you'll notice that you have this little tape running in you, repeating the wildest things. And then when you see that, you'll go, well, it's no wonder I can't get a good relationship, or I can't work well, or can't focus. It's like I keep saying this stuff to myself again and again and again. I noticed this in myself because I spent more than a decade trying to figure these things out. Because when I was a teenager, I became sort of a self-aware. I'm like, wait a second, I have a lot of limiting beliefs, a lot of limiting beliefs around socialization, about relationships, about my own confidence, about my own work ethic, about my own creativity, just a ton of issues. Oh my God, that's why I got into this, because I really felt I really need to fix these things, because I'm not going to be able to attain anything that I want to attain if I remain in these limitations. So I'm a typical overthinker, a typical stuck in your head, neurotic, all of that. And it took me years to understand these things. But here's the good part about it, is that I realized you can actually change these things. You can change these things. And when you start thinking about consciously creating your life, you have to start by understanding that you are already creating your life. You're creating it based on your most real, most honest, most no BS assumptions about life. That's where you're acting from. So the first step is you recognize that and you start working on becoming hyper aware of that. And for a moment, it might even feel like it's getting worse, because now you're not getting what you want, but you realize that you're kind of self-creating that. But you have to keep pushing through that until you attain the sort of the full consciousness of the situation. This, by the way, is related to shadow work, which is another topic in itself, which means that you might experience intense emotions, crying, experiencing grief. All those things are natural at that stage. Once you go through that, you come to the realization that maybe it's possible to actually develop something else inside yourself, a different kind of attitude. And that is possible. And you develop that new attitude by creating a new idea of what you want in life. Ideally, you reinforce that. You reinforce that there's plenty of techniques, plenty of ways of doing that. But in essence, let's simplify it for now by repeating that, by practicing the new thing. You have to release the old first, because all of that energy is sort of locked up. Once it starts getting unlocked by you being conscious of it, then you'll feel more energized, and then you can start creating these new things inside your life. So, conscious creation is less about imagining fancy things and more about recognizing what you already are, but really not what you want to be, not the fake persona that you have, the real you, the one that you talk to yourself only maybe at night, only maybe when you're tired, when your mask falls off. And that creating these things or creating any new reality for yourself, it is way more about simply observing what is, and once you do that, looking at what next step can you create? What is the next step that you can do? And once you pinpoint the next step, asking yourself, what kind of a psychological state would be required or beneficial or useful for doing that? For example, if I have a bad attitude towards, women, men, or whatever, well, first of all, I have to release that trauma. But now that I released it, what would be a useful approach for that? Well, maybe you have to have a kind of a optimistic approach to that. Maybe you have to be open. Maybe you have to consider that there are good people out there, right? What about your physical health? Maybe you have to start considering that maybe sports are actually fun, right? Maybe you have to consider that working is actually interesting. It can be rewarding. You have to start considering that, and then ideally, and this is what I do when I train people in more advanced techniques, and by the way, this is what I mostly attribute to my own ability to change things in my life, is you do these intense active meditation sessions where you just sort of really intensely practice and visualize those psychological states. That's the part that is actually true. It's not about imagining magical castles in the sky, but it's training your brain to be in that state before you get there. Because the thing that you're going to encounter, a challenge that you're going to encounter when you want to create your conscious new reality, is that, well, you haven't been there, you haven't practiced it, and you don't have the reference experiences needed for that new life. And here's the thing, typically, you're not skilled enough to get those situations yet. So it's a tricky situation. But wait, there's a solution. The solution is your brain is capable of creating these imaginary scenarios. You're capable of practicing things. There's few ways of doing that. One is a purely intellectual exercises, imagination exercises, very powerful if done right. The other one is using the fractal smallest part of the thing that you want to do and doing it very seriously and training your brain to enjoy it. Let's say you want to be a big banker, but you can't do that. You're not even studying economics yet. But wait, you can turn on some university lecture on YouTube and start making very serious and neat and tidy notes and just sitting there very intently going, yes, economics. What you do when you do that, these are practical little actions that you can take, is you're training your brain to get into that. And after a while, you just start really enjoying the economics. And by the time when it comes to studying and working in a bank, you'll be already very invested in that. So that's just a random example of how that works. Create your life consciously, okay? Stop living in this daze, in this sleep. Create your life consciously by looking at what it is. Accept who you are and start from that position. Don't look at these magical manifestation formulas. Instead, look what one step I can make in my life. One step, 1 degree improvement, and start from that. Trust me, if you learn to move 1 degree, you will know how to move 2 degrees. If you know how to move 2 degrees, 3, etc. Very soon, you'll know how to do a whole 180. It's absolutely possible. And it's weird that this isn't taught to kids and all that our minds, our brains are flexible. They're flexible. And the actions the results that you get are because of the actions that you take. And the actions that you take are because of the psychological states and mindsets and beliefs that you habitually create in your mind. You change that and you start taking better actions. You start taking better actions, you start being less self-sabotaging, and pretty soon you start getting different results. That's the real way to manifest. That's the real way to consciously create your reality. It's possible. Get into it. Do it. It's fun. It's an interesting way of living life. You realize that you can be at the cause instead of the effect. It's great.